I just wanted to let you know my role in this project is I develop the calls and do a lot of the arts admin. I'm a support system for AJ and the artists as we go through the process. Um, I am also a practicing artist too, so I can help in all kinds of different ways that most administrators can't normally help. So I am that kind of support for everybody as we move through the project. So right now, I'm just going to hand it over to Angus. He's going to share a presentation with everybody, and then feel free to ask questions throughout. We're such a small group. Just raise your hand or interrupt and what have you, and we'll all do our best to answer. And if we don't have the answer, we'll find the answer. All right, take it away, Angus.
Awesome, thanks, Dawn. Well, first of all, I just want to say how nice it is to meet you all. It was really nice to sort of hearing a little bit about everybody and everybody's story and where they're from, and that's a nice way to start one of these sessions. I also want to apologize ahead of time. I'm getting over a bit of a cold, so I may have to try to get through this without coughing or anything. But if I hit mute and suddenly leave the screen for 1 second, that's why. I guess just want to thank everyone for being here. And can you see my screen now? Can you guys see my screen? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Here we go. And I feel like I'm forgetting another thing that I wanted to preamble with, but I guess I'll just get going. Really again, glad to be here and be sort of welcoming everyone. And it was really great to hear about everybody. And so here's a little bit about us. And so I'm going to be just kind of be a bit of a presentation about Cave and Basin and sort of some of the background on the project and how this whole thing started. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Dawn, AJ, Cam, if you have anything that you want to jump in and just add to my presentation, please feel free. Everybody else, if there are any questions that come up during the presentation, I welcome them. Because of my voice and getting over this cold, I probably will sort of try to jump through this all fairly quickly. But please feel free to jump in and ask questions or whatever as you like. Anyway, so I just want to start first by just giving so this is the Parks Canada land acknowledgement, the official one, and I'll follow this up with a little qualifier after. So Cave and Basin National Historic Site, which is located in Banff, is within the present-day territory of Treaty 7, as well as the Métis homeland. The lands and waters of Banff have been used for millennia by Indigenous peoples for sustenance, ceremony, trade, and travel. We thank them for their continuous stewardship and for sharing the land with us. And so that's the official Parks Canada land acknowledgement for Cave and Basin. I want to sort of qualify it by acknowledging that we at Cave and Basin do understand that the whole Banff Bow Valley area has been frequented and is part of the traditional territory of more than just Treaty 7 and Métis. We do recognize that lots of groups from the kind of other side of the mountains, for instance, Ktunaxa, Secwepemc, do have a long history of presence in this place, and archaeological evidence going back thousands of years, pit houses all over the valley. There's all kinds of very clear evidence that it's not only Treaty 7 and Métis who have been in the area. So I just want to acknowledge that, and I'll sort of be getting to that in a few minutes too, by talking about some of the full range of groups that are Indigenous partners for the site. So moving right along. So we're going to talk about the Mural Boxes project. Cave and Basin National Historic Site is the host of this project, and Cave and Basin is a National Historic Site managed by Parks Canada agency in Banff. It's located just outside the outskirts of the town of Banff, within Banff National Park. And that's just a shot of Daryl Kootenay and friends. Daryl, local Stony guy, and doing sort of a drum performance right in the cave, which is at the very center of the site. So I'm talking a bit more about the cave and the landscape around it in a bit. I just want to sort of start by basically saying overview of the Mural Box project. So it is a collaboration between Parks Canada, specifically the Cave and Basin, and the Whyte Museum, and of course, Indigenous artists and partner communities. And, you know, I want to start by saying that in addition to the Indigenous communities and artists who are an essential part of these projects, we could not, like Parks Canada, absolutely could not be doing this this work without the work of Don Saunders Dahl and the Whyte Museum and AJ and everybody on that side who contributes essential kind of methodology, essential knowledge, essential time, effort, and spirit to these projects. So Parks Canada is very proud to be partnering with Don and the Whyte Museum and with all of the partner communities who come and be part of these projects. And so I would just want to say that right off the bat. And the images that you see in the slideshow here, are you seeing, when I'm sharing my screen, are you seeing the little window in the corner with my face?
I'm not seeing that, Angus. I'm just seeing.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have this other window that was in the way of people seeing the actual images on the screen. Okay, that's great. Okay, so thanks, AJ. So the images that you can see here, so the Mural Box project existed before, well before Parks Canada got involved, and so the images that you see on screen are from earlier pilot versions of this project that Don and AJ. I believe AJ was part of. I'm not sure if you're part of both of these, but I know you're part of.
He was part of all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so these are all shots of earlier mural boxes that were created at the Whyte Museum and displayed at various places around Banff and Canmore. So those are sort of sort of to acknowledge that this pilot project was piloted by Don and AJ at an earlier stage before Parks Canada got involved. And then I believe we started to partner about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And last year was the first, last summer was the first phase, the first sort of phase of the Mural Box project at Cave and Basin. So now we're entering the kind of second year of the project, and we're seeking emerging Indigenous artists to create temporary mural box paintings to be displayed prominently on the grounds at Cave and Basin National Historic Site. And in general, these murals will provide artists from Indigenous nations with traditional ties to Banff, with a safe space to express their perspectives on the Indigenous history of the Cave and Basin and the larger Banff-Bow Valley region. We're kind of open to narratives that really focus in on Cave and Basin, or narratives that really relate to the broader place and history, the Indigenous history of the area. And so it's an opportunity for Indigenous artists, elders, and community members, as well as Parks Canada and the Whyte Museum staff, to come together, connect with the site, and share perspectives through art and storytelling, which is really exciting. And I think art and storytelling, we certainly, with reference to some of the sort of comments that were made, certainly open to all kinds of representations, including things like poetry and whatnot. It would be very interesting to see how some other aspects of artistic practice could sort of come into these kind of visual representations as well. So the completed murals will be an opportunity for all visitors to the Cave and Basin to learn about the diverse Indigenous stories, histories, and experiences that live in this very special place. And it is a very special place. It's also a place that gets visited by at least about 300,000 people a year, depending on the year. And of course, there were some differences during the pandemic and stuff, but there are a lot of people who come to this place. So this is really an opportunity for them to encounter Indigenous stories and histories of this place. So we find that very exciting. So the officially identified Indigenous partners for Cave and Basin National Historic Site include the Stoney Nakoda, and that includes the Good Stoney Band, the Bears Paw and Chiniki bands as well, of course, and Blackfoot, Siksika, Kainai, Pigani, and Tsutsina, Tunaha, Secwepemc, and Métis communities. These are all communities who we have sort of official partnership relationships in general with. And then I'll talk about it in a sec, but we also recognize that there are other Indigenous communities who do have relationships with the place, but may not have that sort of official partnership relationship at the moment. And so, we sort of recognize that it's broader than just what I've said here. But over about 3+ years of this project, and the funding is confirmed for next year as well now, we hope to see mural boxes created by artists from all of these partner communities that have traditional ties to Cave and Basin, and possibly others connected to this place. So our priority is kind of to make sure that all of the sort of partner communities that are kind of on the list I just mentioned are included by the end of that 3 years. But we also recognize that there's other groups, like Don often mentions the Mountain Cree, and that there are other groups that may have relationships with the place and have stories to tell. So we do, especially if, as this project continues into the future, we do want to be as inclusive as possible and invite really all Indigenous artists who are interested in participating to apply and participate. So the project started in summer 2022, as I think I mentioned, and we do have now confirmed funding until 2024. So for this upcoming summer and the summer after. So I think we'll definitely be able to kind of meet our goals in terms of at least the basic goals in terms of inclusion, and then we'll see what happens. Definitely, we've had a lot of really positive feedback on this project, so I'm excited about its potential to continue. And then, last summer, in summer 2022, back in June, so the first year of artists were artists from Tsutsina, Stoney Nakoda, specifically Chiniki, and Kainai artist as well, created murals at the Cave and Basin. You can kind of see an image of some of the murals starting to come to life there out on the lawn at the Cave and Basin. Their 3 artworks will be displayed. So they were originally displayed where they are, and I'll talk a little bit more about the location in a minute. But those same artworks that were created last year, we kind of put them in storage over the winter, and now we're really excited to bring them back this summer and have them displayed right down in downtown Banff at a place called Banff Avenue Square, which is kind of a public square right in the middle of the town of Banff. So that'll be an exciting addition to the project, to be able to show those murals again and have those visual stories told again for an even probably bigger audience, considering how many people do come to Banff in the summertime. And so the priority for 2023 will be given to artists from those identified partner nations who have yet to share their stories of this place. Anyone absolutely can apply. I encourage anyone to apply. Our priority is to try to make sure that we're including, the sort of main groups. So we will be giving that somewhat of a priority, but really we encourage everybody to apply, and perhaps there's ways that opportunities can be found to participate. So so next I just wanted to sort of jump into a few details about the Cave and Basin itself for those of you who may not be completely familiar with the location. So Cave and Basin National Historic Site is located just outside the town of Banff at the base of Sulphur Mountain. And in one of the photos you can kind of see an overview of the site one recent May morning. It's kind of surrounded by hills and mountains and et cetera. So this Cave and Basin has been a special and sacred place for Indigenous peoples for over 10,000 years to the present. So we know there's a long, deep history of presence at this place. There's the hot springs, of course, the kind of healing waters, or waters that have been viewed as healing, and that people have traveled for a long time to come and visit. It's also been a site of ceremony, many traditional uses of the place by different groups. So since time beyond memory, Cave and Basin and Banff have been traditional territory for different groups of Indigenous people. And the activities here have included everything from gathering, healing, trade, travel, meeting up with other communities to trade, etc. Cultural exchange, economic activity, spiritual practice and ceremony in connection with the land, we know have been really, really important, especially with the cave. So it's been a really diverse place with many layers of Indigenous presence and then many other stories on top of that. So Cave and Basin exists within the territories of Treaty 7 nations, as well as the territories of several other Indigenous partner communities with historic and contemporary ties to the location. And I mentioned all of these ones already. And I also mentioned that other than the ones sort of shown on my list on the screen, we know that there's others who have strong connections to the place as well. Some of those those connections may be sort of more or less recent, but we're interested in inviting people in to talk about all of it, and to be present in the present. So Cave and Basin, sort of some other things I should say about the place, and on the screen you're seeing some of the images of the cave is kind of hidden away behind all these other historic buildings that were built back in like 1914 to house what essentially became a swimming pool and sort of a spa. And so that's the sort of buildings that you see shown up there. So Cave and Basin is also the site of, basically was the site where Canada's first national park was created. Settlers built swimming pools there with the hot springs, historic architecture, which you see in the images, and lots of tourist activity following the original arrival of the railways. So obviously, this is a multifaceted and sometimes difficult history. When, just acknowledging up front, like when the park was created, that was instantly a case of Indigenous exclusion, where Indigenous people were excluded, not just from the park overall, but from practicing traditional ceremonies and other things at the Cave and Basin and at these sacred locations. It was also later on the parts of the area were actually constructed by a World War II enemy alien internment camp, where Ukrainian and other people who at the time, because of World War I, were viewed as, quote, enemy aliens, were actually put into camps that actually existed at Cave and Basin, and were basically labor camps. Built a lot of the infrastructure that went into early Banff National Park. Later on, there were all kind of, sometimes racist policies that were part of the operation of the park. So we just want to acknowledge all of these sort of aspects of the sort of sometimes difficult negative history up front as well, and recognize that they're all part of the storytelling that needs to happen in that place. So basically, in general, over thousands of years to the present, many different peoples, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, have lived in and visited this place, making it what it is today, which is a landscape that's kind of multi-layered with stories, languages, memories, and perspectives. And our goal and our dream is to see all of those stories, all of those truths, all of those, even if they don't always agree with one another, are basically represented in this place. So that's the dream. So, and of course, at the heart of the history of this place are these mineral hot springs that have drawn people to the spot for millennia, flowing up through the earth from the depths of Sulphur Mountain. And the special geological features of the place, which is the cave, which you can see pictured on the right with drum performance happening, and the sort of vent hole up at the top of the cave, letting light and fresh air down into the hot spring pool that's at the bottom of the cave. And then there's the basin, which I'll show in a minute, and other landforms. And because of the hot water, there's all this unique wildlife and ecology that thrive in this very special it's kind of a hot water marsh all around the cave and basin building itself. So I'm just going to sort of run through a quick image tour, and if we have time, we'll show a film at the end, just if people want to get a little bit more of a flavor of the site, but just a quick image tour. So this is the cave, again, with the vent hole. This is actually an image from the film we're going to show, of light streaming down into the cave. There is the basin, which is outside, still within the grounds of the building itself. But this is the basin, which is another sort of hot spring pool, sort of that neat turquoise color, surrounded by rock formations that were actually created by the hot springs. And if you put a camera down into the pool, that's what you see, hot water bubbling up from the bottom in this kind of sand and mud, and creating the hot springs flow into this feature. There's Sulphur Mountain with the cave and basin buildings at its base, and of course that hot springs water, it basically starts as rain and snow that falls on the side of the mountains all around the area, and then sort of flows down deep into the earth, into cracks in the rock, and then comes up and bubbles up in various locations around Banff, including cave and basin as hot springs. Around the site, there's basically all these different hot springs that sort of pop out. And so you get these kind of flows of hot water that go all around the surrounding sort of slopes. This is upstream from the buildings themselves, and it creates these kind of hot water marshes that again have sort of unique plants and animals, animals and plants that don't normally live in Banff. Everything from garter snakes to damselflies to tropical fish that someone once put into some of the pools that are still there. So it's kind of a very unique place in that way. And these are just a few shots of the marshes, the sort of the boardwalks in winter around the site, and people checking them out. Got lots of steam in the winter, of course. And then downstream from the buildings, what you have is the water keeps flowing down the hill, and then you get this big open sort of warm water marsh down at the bottom, which is sort of incredible habitat for wildlife. Stays ice free through much of the winter, at least parts of it too. And that's where the tropical fish are. So yeah, so it's a really inspiring landscape, and you can see why people have been coming here for thousands of years. And just another shot of the marshes at the bottom. So nowadays, Cave and Basin is protected as a National Historic Site. And there's kind of a museum there in the buildings, and it's looked at as a cultural landscape, which means it's a very special landscape that's conserved and preserved, not just for natural features, but also because of the historic features of the place, and includes the cave and basin water features, the historic buildings, and the marsh wetlands surrounding the building. And it is visited each year by hundreds of thousands of people from around the world. Even a lot more people than actually come into the site actually travel by on the trails outside, which is right where the mural boxes are. So it is a great opportunity to share stories out there and to have artwork seen as well. So and that's our sort of philosophy of this place, or our guiding statement, is that it's a gathering place for sharing stories about the connections between people and the land in special places across the northern reaches of Turtle Island. So because it's kind of the place where the park system was born, we also tell stories not just of the place itself, but of all other special places across Turtle Island. So so why do mural boxes at the Cave and Basin? And this will feature some shots from last year's project in terms of images. So the purpose of the Cave and Basin Mural Boxes project is to honor the rich Indigenous history and contemporary significance of this very special place through an art initiative that shares visual stories from a diversity of Indigenous community perspectives, making these stories visible to all site visitors in the form of colorful murals created by emerging Indigenous artists. So that's kind of the mission statement for the project. And there you see Gordon Wesley working on his mural last year. So the principles guiding the project, just basic principles: truth, inclusion, gathering, sharing, exchange of knowledge and perspectives across diverse cultural boundaries, which is a big one. This is a real opportunity for learning, whether it's the artists and the communities coming to share their stories, whether it's the Parks Canada staff. Proud to say quite a number of Parks Canada staff who work at this site now are Indigenous, so that's very exciting as well. This has been a really meaningful project for them, from what I've been told. And so also, storytelling, really rooting things in the land. Language is a really big one, which I'll show some pictures in a sec. Reconciliation, healing, all of these things. And of course, these are just words, but we hope that this project is really sort of an example of action that's leading out from some of these principles and these words. So the guiding theme for the artworks created through this Mural Boxes project has been stories of this place. So really, again, whether that's about Cave and Basin specifically, or whether that's about the region in general, really the focus here is to tell stories of this place from a variety of different perspectives. And so in the first successful year, the project prioritized artists from Treaty 7 nations. This was what we did last year. So we focused on mostly Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda. Now that the project's moving forward with confirmed funding, the intent is to open up that participation to artists from all Indigenous nations with recognized ties to the area and include everyone. And again, it's at least a 3-year project at this point, but could go even longer depending on funding. So that's exciting. And just to acknowledge this previous picture, so I showed Gordon here with his mural. This is from Nathan McGuinness, Tsuut'ina artist who joined us last year, and I'll say a bit more about that in a sec. And this is a shot of Ina Old Shoes, the Kainai artist who joined us. And this was Ina's first mural. Just want to point that out. So it's this very much is an opportunity where just because you haven't done a mural yet, well, it might still be an opportunity to build your skills and stuff. And I think she did a pretty good job. So in terms of sort of the actual site and sort of some of the practical details, the murals created during this project will be are kind of painted on these large cubes, which are kind of 8 by 8 by 8, basically plywood boxes that are sort of painted with a white base coat, and then that becomes the place where the mural gets painted. They're installed within the grounds of Cave and Basin National Historic Site in this prominent location on the lawn outside the bathing pavilion building. So I'll just advance one so you can see it better, but you can see the arrow pointing to the mural box installations basically on this lawn that's out in front of the main buildings, and that has a trail that goes by it that leads to Sundance Canyon and a network of other hiking trails, and literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people actually walk by the site every summer. So that's exciting. And this location has great visibility for that reason. Not just to people who come inside the building, but also for all these thousands of people that walk and ride their bikes and stroll by the site every year. So I think it's a great location. It's a nice place to spend a few days painting a mural as well, depending on weather, I guess. This is just a sort of a photoshopped image that we used last year of the site with kind of some just photoshopped murals from last year, or from the previous pilot project. But this is what it actually looked like when the blank boxes were installed last spring. So you can see kind of what they look like and how they're arrayed in the space, and then that became the substrate upon which these murals were painted. And so just quickly sort of run through, giving a sense of what it looked like last year. So here's an overview of the 3 boxes in the midst of being painted. Gordon Wesley in the foreground, Nathan McGuinness in the middle, and Ina Old Shoes sort of in the distance there. And then so this is Gordon, Stoney fellow from Chiniki, and I believe this was Gordon's a landscape painter, but this was his first time doing a mural using spray paint, I believe, if I've got that correct. So again, this is where AJ's skill as a facilitator and a mentor comes in. I think Gordon did an amazing job for apparently never having really used spray paint before on his murals. And his was titled "These Mountains Are Our Sacred Places," and really inspired by the book of the same name by the author, not John Snow. Sorry, I'm trying to remember the name of the
Chief John Snow.
Chief John Snow. That's it. Okay. And so Gordon's mural showed several prominent members of the Stoney community, but also this is kind of a rough shot with the spray screens and everything still in there. But I just wanted to show that each one of the murals last year featured very prominently Indigenous languages. So this one shows the title of his mural in Stoney, and that was an important part, and a part that we really felt was exciting and important was to show those Indigenous languages represented very, very prominently on the murals. So that's Gordon's, and then we move on to Nathan McGinnis, Dene guy from Tsutsina, and Nathan you may have seen his murals around Calgary. This one is an example of sort of inspired by an image he had of his grandmother, and sort of an anime style with aspects of ribbon skirt thrown in, and a really neat image. And then this is another image which was really, really significant in the sense that it sort of shows I believe the notion of sort of a powwow circle that goes back to the original what were known as the Banff Indian days, which were kind of a colonial organized event, but that was actually viewed in a lot of ways as a very positive thing for a lot of Indigenous people back in the day, because this was actually an opportunity to sort of gather together with all the Treaty 7 representatives from all the Treaty 7 nations, and actually kind of, as I think Nathan sort of put it, this was a chance where people were actually invited to come and be themselves, and that was sort of a really important thing for them. So this is kind of his tribute to that. And it sort of became almost sort of a symbol of the whole project last year with these three nations coming together. And I just wanted to sort of show that this is a shot from the early sort of workshops where people were sketching out their ideas and stuff. So somebody was talking about sort of blowing up ideas starting small as a sketch and then blowing up big. And this sort of gives you a sense of how that powwow circle, that image, that sketch of the grandmother on the horse kind of turned into fully large images sort of from those concept sketches. So I just thought it was fun to kind of show that kind of process. And of course, Nathan used a lot of paint pens and things like that to do his work, and just looking cool, on the job, which is awesome. And there's just another shot of his work. And then there was Ina Oldshoes, who I believe this was her first mural period. And so she's a Kainai artist, and just a few shots of process. And I think that's Faye Heavy Shield in the middle, if I'm not mistaken. So hanging out with Ida and sharing a laugh. So just a few process shots of Ina taking her concepts sort of from initial drawings. There's AJ as well. All the way to and also using projectors at dusk to sketch images off of photographs. This is an image that she based on a photograph of her grandfather, I believe, who was a storyteller, and that sort of filling that image in, and then eventually it becoming the finished work. And it's just a couple of other shots of different sides of her mural that were kind of in process, and then finally resulting in the final work, which we'll see in a bit. I just wanted to say we also featured artist statements on each box. So a short piece of writing from each artist, sort of explaining their story, what inspired them, what their work was about. And right now you can see in these photos, you can see the two languages, French and English, but we're actually adding for the display this year. We want to get on this faster this year. we will be adding the individual Indigenous languages to each one of these murals to make sure those are included as well. Just translation and production of that took a bit longer. Yeah, that's included. Just a shot from the final launch ceremony of Ina's family and some of the people that came out to celebrate the opening of the work. We did have a sort of a launch celebration at the end that featured artist talks, elder talks, and performances as well from each community involved. So there's our park superintendent, Banff National Park superintendent, opening the ceremony with the elders getting ready to talk, and just some of the performances that were featured along with the rest of the afternoon's festivities. It finally stopped raining long enough for these dancers to come out and perform, and the drummers under the tent, and yeah, the Stony dancers as well. So yeah, so just to kind of wrap up, I sort of alluded to before, and then I'll pass it over to Don, and Don's going to talk more about the kind of actual artist statement and the actual call to artist process, and give you more information about that. But I just wanted to sort of wrap up by circling back to some of these sort of goals and principles. And again, you know, these are just words. I think the Mural Boxes project is a good example of us finally taking these kind of principles and actually starting to put them into action, which is kind of the main thing we're all really excited about. But just in terms of, you know, why do these mural boxes? Why Parks Canada wants to support this project and other projects like it? It's because of the agency's overall commitment to advancing the goals of truth, reconciliation, and right relations at all sites managed by Parks Canada. This is really an important central goal of everything that's going on right now. It takes time. It's not perfect to start. It's sometimes a bumpy process, but it is something that people are really committed to. Decolonizing places like Cave and Basin, which you know, is an important Indigenous cultural site where people were excluded for a long time. Building and improving relationships with Indigenous communities and organizations in ways that honor the rich Indigenous history of this place and others. Collaborating with Indigenous partners to better understand, communicate, and just you know, understand the diverse Indigenous values, perspectives, and histories that are associated with this site. Basically, there's so much that we just don't know and don't understand, in part because, you know, collaboration and participation from Indigenous partners was really absent for a long time because it was excluded. And so really just starting the process of knowledge sharing and starting to understand, you know, what is the significance of these places. And so that's really important. So our you know, really one of our #1 goals is facilitating opportunities for Indigenous partner communities to share their stories, histories, and points of view at this place in their own voices and on their own terms. So important principle of the project, we're not, you know, just it's your story, you tell it the way you need to, and in your voice, and you know, that's really important. And in general, the goal is to make Cave and Basin and Banff National Park more safe, welcoming, and culturally responsive places for Indigenous people, for Indigenous participation. That's the real, you know, one of the real main goals. And you know, at Cave and Basin, that's not just storytelling; it's also just ceremony, traditional practices, gatherings and events, collaborations, economic opportunities. Whatever basically Indigenous partner communities want to do, we want to sort of open the doors and figure out how to do that in this space. So and then, you know, just broadly speaking, I mean, this is part of broader goals to improve the overall diversity, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, of all the stories, histories, voices, and communities that are included at these places, and, you know, creating exciting opportunities for you know, people who visit these sites, and there are many, to come be inspired by the site's cultural and natural richness, and by the diverse and inclusive approach to storytelling and participation that they find there. So those are our sort of the goals, the kind of heart and soul of where we're kind of coming from. And you know, there's project goals as well which very much sort of are in line and supports these same basic underlying principles. We're hoping that this project specifically will welcome and intrigue site visitors, tell visual compelling stories about the rich Indigenous history of the place, inspire the general public to learn more and become more aware of Indigenous ways of knowing, ways of doing, ways of connecting, ways of being, including connections to the land and all of those things. And just contribute to the long-term goal of decolonizing sites of like Cave and Basin. And I'll sort of just wrap it up there. I think basically, I think this project does do a good job of opening up that space for the expression of those perspectives, and we have a lot more to do, but this is kind of square one, and we're really happy to see it continuing, and it's an opportunity for everybody to come together and share in this place. And once they're completed, the murals are an amazing opportunity for visitors to kind of encounter these truths and these stories. And I just wanted say that the response so far to the last year project has just been overwhelming. Like visitors, Parks Canada staff, our Indigenous partner communities, everybody's just been really thrilled. So we're just really excited to see it all continue. So your art goes here. Please apply. And I'm going to pass it over to Dawn now to talk about the artist call or whatever you want to talk about.
Thanks.
So I know I went on there for a while, but
yeah. Thanks. I just wanted to give AJ an opportunity if you wanted to add anything to Angus's presentation there.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Angus. That was good. That really gives like a good background of sort of what we're up to. And I think especially seeing those images of the site, that's a big part of the inspiration for us. That was like a huge part of the inspiration last year. So I just want to run quickly through kind of the creative process, just so that as an artist, you know what you'd be signing up for. I want to make sure that's really clear up front. But if there's anything that's unclear after this presentation, I know we're throwing a lot at you at once. We're like all open books. We're all really happy to answer questions. And also if there's anything about the application that's confusing or even just like challenging, we want to make this process as accessible as possible. So it's important for us that we get a lot of applications and that people don't stop when they see the paperwork part of it, because that shouldn't be what stops people from going ahead with something like this. So in terms of the creative process, I just want to chat about that for a second. So there's a few ways to look at it. One way to look at it is breaking it down into about 4 stages. So one of the first stages that we went through last year was just research. So that involved coming to the site at Cave and Basin, also doing some research on site at the Whyte Museum, just learning about the history of the area from a variety of perspectives. So the Whyte Museum has like a bunch of different resources there. They have a big library of old books and everything like that. They also have a really large collection of photographs of the area from the past. And so that was a big resource for us as visual artists, looking at these old photos of the landscape from the past before the town was there even. So that's something we have access to in terms of inspiration. After that research phase, we jump right into consultation. And actually these 2 phases are kind of mashed right up to each other on purpose. Because when you have these ideas from the research, you want to be able to take those fresh ideas and then bring them back to your community or the elders that you're consulting with, whoever it is that you need to kind of touch base with to make sure that you're on the right track creatively. So that consultation phase is really important. And there's a few different ways we've kind of looked at consulting. And so one is just bringing your ideas back to your home community, again, back to your elders, to people who you respect and who are knowledge keepers for your community. Another way that we did kind of some consultation is bringing in other artists. So last year we had Faye Heavy Shield, we had Becca Hansen. They came in and actually talked to us about what it is to be a public artist. So sometimes if you're used to working on smaller canvas and maybe you've exhibited your work in galleries before, some things change when you go to exhibit your work outside. For example, the audience changes. So sometimes people are just walking by and they just get a brief glance at your box and they're not going to read the interpretive statement. They're just going to get one quick look at it. So there's things to think about when your audience is everybody walking by like that. And so that's one of the things that we brought those consultants in for too, is just talking to other artists who have a lot of experience, myself, but also some other artists to make sure we have like some rounded perspectives to help us move forward in a good way on something like this. After that consultation, we moved to concept development. So part of this is us sitting together in a room, just kind of bouncing ideas off each other, And then, part of it, we go back to the hotel rooms at night and people kind of do their own sketching. This is really a part of the process that's open to the way that you make things. So for example, Ina last year was really like digitally savvy. She was drawing on the iPad. That's something I have lots of experience in too. So kind of working digitally. And if you saw the image she was projecting onto her box, she had a photo of her grandpa. She had a photo of her home territory. She had a photo of all these different elements that she mashed together to create one reference image. And then she projected that and traced it. So that was kind of her process, right? If you look at Nathan, he was actually using stencils. So part of what was important for his process was coming up with the designs for each one of those stencils. And so when we're working on concept development, it's not just coming up with the image that you're going to paint, but also we're chatting about how you're going to achieve that image and what kind of tools and technical support you need to make that happen. And that's where one of the areas where I can really be a helpful resource, because I've painted a bunch of different styles of image. I've painted realistic things. I've painted very flat graphic things. So there's lots of different ways I can help you get that idea out of your head or off of your little sketch onto the bigger wall. And then after that concept development, we do a little back and forth. So we share that back with the rest of the team. Again, that's another stage of consultation. So once you have a concept, you need to share that back with your community and just make sure it's resonating with the people that are important to you. And then we jump into the creation. And so that's when we're spending time all on site. What we did last year is we were all working on our cubes at the same time. We just kind of got to site early in the morning, kind of played it by ear a little bit with the weather. And in that way, we're able to kind of support each other as artists too. So like Angus mentioned, Gordon, who was one of the artists last year, is like a really skilled landscape painter. And so he's able to give some kind of feedback on ways to paint landscapes, right? And I've painted some landscapes, but not as many as Gordon. So he was a resource for us in that way, right? So as a team of artists, we're just able to kind of bounce things off of each other and just like really skill build like that too. And one thing I noticed is that we're all connected after the project too. So I still talk to all of the artists from last year and the years before that too, and they talk to each other as well. So I think one of the benefits from this project is just strengthening your connection with other artists in Alberta and in that area, and just being able to, again, just learn from each other, grow, and have just more connections all over too. So, and a couple just more technical details. So with that cube, there's obviously 4 sides to it, but 2 of the sides are basically your main focus. You'll have noticed in the images that one of the sides is actually an interpretive panel with a bunch of writing, so that people can walk up to the cube. They can actually walk around the whole cube and see every piece of art that you painted and then read about it. So they don't just have to understand everything right from the image. You have a chance to explain via language what the significance of these things that you painted are. So in terms of how much surface area to cover, there's 2 sides to really focus on. Then that one side with the interpretive panel, you're gonna have to do a little bit of writing. And then the last side is the language side. So if you saw in Gordon's, it had the name of his piece in Stony language, really large. And so that's something that I'll help a lot with. I have a lot of experience painting lettering. I used to work in sign painting and things like that. So I can help you there, making sure that the language is really easy to read, that it's nice and bold off that side of your piece, and also just being another set of hands to make sure that that side of your piece looks professional and looks how you want it to look. So really, like, I'm just kind of more your assistant on that side. But I'm happy to help you design it, choose kind of typefaces and things to just get the expression across the way that you need to get it across. Yeah, so that's part of it. Again, like you saw, the site is really inspiring. So we spent a lot of time just walking around the area. Like there were bears coming up while we were painting. It's like really safe because the parks staff was there. So just kind of making sure that we were safe, distance and everything. But in terms of inspiration, it's kind of hard to beat. You won't spend a lot of time on your phone Googling for nature photos. You could just take 10 steps and kind of take the reference photo that you need. So in terms of like creative process, that was like a really rich part of the process last year, is like really inspiring. I think that's all I have to say for now. Yeah, this is a really good opportunity to both represent your community to a large audience, but also create a portfolio item for yourself. So this is a pretty high profile project. And this is the type of project that would be likely to get you more mural opportunities in the future, just because you have so much support and assistance in making sure that the final piece looks really good and presents really well and has the right audience. This is like a nice portfolio piece too. So that's just like one more thing to think about as well. And yeah, I think we're happy to, again, answer any questions at this point too, or we can answer after via email if you like, but we're here for you for sure. So
I just wanted to ask, like,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. Just oh, look, we're jumping in.
No, go ahead.
if we have an idea in mind already, is that like to, because I don't know, I just, can I write that in my application or whatever? But because I just had, like, when I saw it, I was like, okay, yeah. Anyways, I'm like, I just want to talk. I'm like, I already want to talk about it, but
Yeah.
that, like, I know there's research and I understand that kind of idea, but also just wondering about coming in.
Yeah, totally. I can jump in there. We're definitely open to you kind of coming in with some ammo or some inspiration creatively already. I think with the research phase, we found like there was a lot of depth there, and there's just so much to learn about the site. Like one thing that hasn't even come up yet are these like really interesting little snails that live there, that are like biologically really fascinating. So there's just so much to be inspired by. So it's great if you come with some inspiration. Don't be surprised if your inspiration is kind of doubled and tripled and maybe your direction changes a little bit. But yeah, I mean, coming in with some things in mind already is great.
Do you know that the themes though for this project is stories of this place? We want you to talk about stories from your community's perspective of the hot springs, of Banff, of the Bow Valley, of mountains, whichever stories you want to share and you feel comfortable sharing. But we want you to share those stories. This is the purpose of the project, is the fact that Indigenous stories of this place have not been shared. So that's where we really want to encourage that theme to come through in however way you feel most comfortable.
Yeah, because within that sense of place, the opportunities are very broad. There's so many stories and ways sort of into that. It's just that sense of place is an important part of it. So yeah.
Haley, did you have?
Yeah, I had a quick question about the panels themselves, like once they're done. So are they just painted over, or are we able to take them? Or does the Cave and Basin become the owners of them?
So technically, they become the property of Parks Canada and Cave and Basin. They're preserved as artworks though. So the idea with them is that they will be stored when because they're not really something that you can necessarily have out in the winter or like for season, because they will eventually deteriorate. And so the idea is that they'll continue to sort of live and be displayed in the area for as long as they kind of stay in presentable shape. So as I think we mentioned, the ones from last year are now are going to be taken down and displayed in downtown Banff. So it's kind of like, in terms of intellectual property, technically Parks Canada owns the physical artworks, but not any of the intellectual property or anything like that goes, or conceptual or Indigenous knowledge or anything like that that goes into creating them. But the physical artworks are basically sort of kept and preserved as legacy items for continued display. And there was something else I wanted to say about that, but that's essentially kind of what it is.
For future, like just going forward with the funding and stuff, that artists be compensated for those, because those are...
Artists are compensated, Haley. We pay artists quite a bit.
For the work? So you buy the work?
Oh, we pay a fee, we pay for travel, we pay for food, we pay for accommodation, we pay for materials. So everything is paid for.
But for example, is the city of Banff paying to now display them again? Because that would be
yes.
just
yeah.
I want
the artists are going to be paid again.
Okay.
Because they're in a different site. So basically, if you're selected, you're contracted, your artwork is to be on the Cave and Basin site. Because the site has moved, the artists will be paid a different fee because they're being shown in a different spot. Yeah. If the artworks continue to stay at the Cave and Basin, then no, that's where they're originally intended to be. So you don't get another fee if they stay at the Cave and Basin, but if they move around, then you do. So that's your entitlement. And also know that copyright stays with the artists. That just the physical paintings are are now the property of Parks because they have paid for them.
And that was the part I forgot to throw in that I sort of forgot there was that we also explicitly make it a part of the contract that if so as Don said, if they just stay at Cave and Basin for display, that's just part of the original agreement. But if Parks Canada wishes to display them in any other locations that aren't actually on the ground of Cave and Basin or the Whyte Museum, that requires the permission of the artist. So we want to make sure that they're not going to be displayed in any way that the artist or their community thinks is inappropriate or whatever. So we try to weave those kinds of sort of checks and balances in as well, so that we make sure that everybody's happy with how things are being presented down the line.
So I'm going to quickly share my screen and show you where the call is on the Whyte Museum website and a little bit of information about that. Everybody can see that?
Yep.
Thanks, AJ. So this call is actually here on the Whyte Museum website. You go under About, Work with Us. That's where the call is. So we have two calls right now. Actually, I'm looking for an assistant to help with the project. And then below that is the actual call for the artist. And you just click here and it will take you here. So this is the actual call. And if you scroll down, like all the information we've talked about is here. This is my email address. If you'd like to arrange for a phone call or have a few questions via email. These are the costs. It's a $3,500 artist fee plus travel, plus per diem, plus accommodation and supplies. So it's technically a lot more than $3,500 at the end of the day, but you get everything is taken care of for 2 trips to Banff. One to do a workshop in May for a few days and another for a few more days in June. So this just talks about the background, all those things that Angus already went through, the site description, the mentorship between all of us as you go through the project. And again, the goals that Angus had already talked to. There's a schedule here. This is subject to change and it will be dependent on the artist selected. We want to make sure that the dates in the May workshop and the June installation work for everybody. So that'll be one of the first things we talk about if you're selected is confirming dates. We like to make sure that there's room and time if you want to bring elders to Banff to talk at the workshop, we can do that. We also want to bring people to the celebration in June. So we have some budget for the celebration and unveiling. So that's a basic, really general schedule. Again, here's a picture of the mural boxes, some of those pictures that Angus had already shared today. We want to make sure that you know that mentorship and guidance will be provided to the mentee in all aspects of the public art making process, including but not limited to content creation, idea generation and design development, art making skills, fabrication and installation, project management skills that include budgets, timelines, and reporting. So we just want to make sure you know that you'll touch on all these things throughout this process. So to submit, you just send me an email with your CV or resume, 1 page max of an expression of interest, something that describes your art making practice and your desire for mentorship, and 10 images. So make sure that your images are clearly labeled with your name. And if you could also include in a slide ID or image ID, the title, the dimensions, the year, the medium, and the year created. So it's a really simple process, but do let me know if there's any challenges or issues you have with that process. The application deadline is Monday, February 27th at 1 minute before midnight. And then we will send you an email that confirms we've received it within 5 business days. So if you haven't received that email, do reach out. And be sure to include some of this information in your statement if you'd like. You can include, someone asked about some ideas that you have. You're more than welcome to write about that and include it in your statement. But we do evaluate the applications according to this kind of general criteria. Experience in the visual arts. Public art experience is an asset, but not required. You've expressed your interest in being part of this mentorship opportunity. You have an interest in Indigenous community engagement and collaboration. You have knowledge of your Indigenous art practice and cultural protocols, or know how to obtain that knowledge. And experience in project management and all that kind of stuff is an asset, but not required. So those are just the basics around this call. And again, where you can find it is on the whytemuseum.org under about, where it says work with us, and you just click there. So that's all. Did anyone have any questions about the application process? Sure, go ahead.
For the 10 images, do you want them separate and then like include like a list with those details, or do you want it like one PDF file and then like each page, the image and with the information underneath?
Whichever works easiest for you.
Okay.
Whatever is, either of those ways is absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add a couple thoughts at the end here too. Just from my experience from last year with the project. I'm really grateful, Haley, that you asked those questions kind of about reimbursement and who owns the images after, because it's like a really important time to start asking that stuff. And I think in terms of the mentorship for this project too, that's like a really big part of mentorship as an artist. It's just kind of like, how do we answer questions like that when we're dealing with, you know, a client or somebody that we're painting artwork for, a commission or something like this? So that's like a big part of the conversation. I think that's something that like we'll keep on talking about, things like that throughout the process as well, not just what the image should look like, right? It's really important for me personally, and I know everyone else involved in this, that you as artists get at least as much as you put into this out of it. And I'd love to see you get more. So this is like part of the mission behind this is just building capacity and making it easier for Indigenous artists to seize opportunities like this and to be able to express their voice in public places. So that's like really the goal behind this, is for you to show up and really feel super supported and to be able to create the work that maybe you felt like you had a few challenges in creating it before, you didn't know quite how to execute this style of painting, whatever it is. That's really what the program is about. And that's why I'm involved with it, just to kind of make sure that we can focus in on that and focus in on celebrating you as artists. So I want to make sure we kind of end on that note and kind of center that aspect, is that's really what the core of what it's about, as well as all those other things we said, but that just making sure your artistic voice is centered in the project and celebrated throughout the project is like the key. So yeah, I just want to end on that note.
I did just have one question for the Whyte Museum and Parks Canada. Do you have specific contacts with Tunaka that you work with? And
yeah, we do. We have a number of, mostly from Akiskanak.
okay, so like Lillian and okay.
Lillian. Yeah.
Lillian. Yeah. No, I mean, I like, we're a
Fair.
very small nation. So
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, for example, when you say like the artist statement translated, like, I don't know that I'm gonna spend hours of my elders' time when we have about 20 language speakers, like, to do that. So, but I do think possibly we could do something smaller. And I'm not talking like I'm a part of this, but I more want to talk like I'm part of Tunaka, which is to say that if you're looking for someone from our nation, there will be, it's not the same as Cree, for example, where you can find a translator. So I just want to share, you know, we run into some of these issues as well. So I'm excited about the project, and I'm also like, coming from smaller nations or smaller communities, and with language isolate as an example,
We also provide a fee for those translations too, like, so that might help with finding
You know,
some,
like, I mean, I just spent a year translating a poem
yeah,
and I got 2 pages.
right.
And that's from somebody who, like, so I just to let, like, I when I'm saying it, I'm like, that's great that you have fees. We don't have people that can do it.
To actually
So
do
I just like recognizing the grief of language work and
We can figure
even
that out
artwork.
when it what
Mhm.
comes to it, you know, with there's understanding around the time constraints around that too. And
Yeah.
I also want to share that, you know, I'm making efforts to engage the artists from last year as they can fall into these roles of mentorship too. So there could be other ways that we want to keep engaging these selected artists in the program, and also the ones that aren't selected, we also have a different project that they could be involved in, and that's what we did last year too. We want to keep a positive experience happening. We want artists to understand, you know, it can be competitive and not everyone can be selected, but hopefully we can find ways to still encourage artists to be part of something maybe smaller, but they still get some experience, and in hopes that they'll apply for the next year.
Just want to recognize those. I think it's really, it's really, you know, always illuminating to and really important to hear, you know, especially around language and stuff, here and get a better understanding of these issues. We're having similar issues with another project we're doing right now that requires a specific translation style of translation for Pagani, which only one elder can provide. And so we kind of really acknowledge that not always a sort of a one size fits all solution or approach to some of these things, and that's okay. I mean, I sort of didn't really talk about it, but I sort of alluded to the fact that the Indigenous translations for the artist statements have taken a lot longer, and in fact we're not even in place, you know, at the end of last summer, and will hopefully be in place for all 3 of them for this summer for remounting those 3 mural boxes. But part of the reason for that is that there were, you know, each one is its own scenario and takes some time, and you know, to some degree from our point of view, even if it takes 2 years, like we're happy to sort of stick with it and try to at least do our best to try to make sure that gets represented, and that we've at least tried to do that. But we also recognize issues like elder fatigue and you know, all these kind of unique situations that might come up with a smaller community. So that's okay, and we're you know, interested in working through those issues for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, I just like to talk, just because we have an animation that just came out. So, and I'm like, I just did some of this, so I just wanted to flag it for people because it's been quite the journey.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it up. It's awesome. We have a video too, if you guys wanted to stick around. Cam was going to show a video about the cave and basin if you'd like to see it.
I guess maybe I might show the video just because Cam was having some challenges with his sound on his computer. So
Sure,
I'm happy to show it if we feel like we've sort of hit a sort of a logical place to do that. The film is basically a 10-minute sort of visual exploration of the cave and basin. So there's not really a lot of words. It's just really a trip through space. So I'd love to show that now, but before we do, I just want to say I hope everybody, all of the artists who joined us tonight apply. It'd be really nice to see applications from all of you, and thank you very much for joining us and for your time.
Thank you.
Just in case we don't get a chance to say that again. So do
Are there any
you
other
want me to show you?
questions? Before
Yeah,
we
any more
start, are there
questions?
any other questions?
You can always
No?
email if you have any other questions
No.
too. Feel free.
And we'll stick around after the video too if people want to ask anything about it or whatever. But all right, I'm just going to share my screen. Are you seeing this now? Do you see it okay, Cam?
We see
Yeah, I
it.
see it.
Okay. Let's see if I can start playing it here. Let me know if the sound doesn't come through.
I don't hear any sound either. It was like I was waiting.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah,
I
nothing.
was
don't-
having the same issue.
You can't hear the sound?
No,
Okay, I do not know why exactly. Well, that's kind of too bad. You still don't hear the bird sound?
no,
Nothing.
it is stopped
Okay.
as well.
Well, sound is half the experience. I mean, I could show it without it. Do you want to try, Cam?
Sure, I can try.
Just to see if we can
I
get
have
it
the
on yours?
same issue.
Because I really don't know why the sound's not coming through. Sorry.
Is it available somewhere? Like, is it on the site or is it?
We're just about
It's
to
your
launch it
private
on
one.
YouTube really soon. Yeah, but it's not. Otherwise, I would just share a link. But it's very mellow. You might be ready for bed by the end of it, but it just gives you we like it because it just gives a really, I think, nice immersive sense of the landscape, and it was created one very sort of crisp May morning a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm
Cam,
actually
if,
not getting video on yours either. I'm just getting a frozen screen.
Yeah. We may be canceled due to technical issues. I'm not sure.
Technical
happens.
difficulties.
May not
Sorry,
be.
sorry, everybody.
I don't know why the sound's not going through on mine. I have no idea.
Yeah,
So maybe we could send out a link or what have you.
Sure.
we can,
on YouTube
yeah.
to share it, and we can
We'll try to find a way. Yeah.
we'll find a way to get it to everybody, because I think all three of you have signed up, registered, so I can send an email to you. So I guess last chance for questions or comments. Everybody's feeling okay, and just let us know if you have any questions or need any help with application. I'm more than happy to help.
Awesome.
All right, we're gonna call it a night then.
thank you. Nice
Thank
to meet
you,
you all.
everybody.
Thanks
Nice to
everyone for
meet
Thank you
coming.
so
everybody.
much, everyone.
Thank you.
good night.
Take care. Stay
Night.
warm. Thanks, everybody.